In the name of God, God of the universe. At our right hand is Michael, our left is Gabriel. In front of us is Uriel, behind us Raphael. Above our heads, Shekhinah. Gotta die with me. Yada, 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 word for angel is malach, or messenger. I often think maybe even message might be a better definition of what an angel is in the world. Some sort of message from the infinite eternal. The idea, maybe it's a meme, you know. I like to invite in the message, the angels, to a lot of things that I do. I like to have an opportunity just to hear your names and also your preferred gender pronouns. So do you use he and him, she and her, they, them, see and hear? What kind of pronouns do you use when you think about yourself, when you ask people to refer to you? And if you haven't, some people really don't care what people use, but if you haven't really thought about it, I ask you to think about it and say, what do you really prefer people to use? So my name is Menachem, and I prefer he, him, and they, them as neutral pronouns for myself. And I always like to go clockwise. So.
Karen? I guess I've never thought about it, but I would have to say she, her, they.
My name is Mark, and I have never thought about it either, but I would go with what she just said.
My name is Julie, and I have never thought about that either, but I would go with she, her, or they, them.
My name is Gentleman and Riddle. Not Riddle in my pronoun.
I'm Nancy Sayer. I would wish she, her, they, them.
I'm Douglas. I'm good with that.
She, her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm Mike. He or him.
I'm Sophia, she, her, they.
Thought-provoking question. Even later.
I'm Mary. She, her.
I'm Vita, she, her, they.
I'm Sophie, same, she, her.
I'm Wesley.
I'm sorry, I was out there talking. I'm Ronnie, and then there's a
Preferred gender pronouns.
Hi, I'm Kirsten, and for myself personally, she, her, and if I talk about other people, usually they, them.
Okay, I'm Chelsea, and if other people are talking or referring to me, she or her, and if I'm referring, I.
My name is Fatma, and I would prefer she, her, they, them.
Marilyn Willis, she, her, and he.
Jenna Hania, and it would be she and her, and similar to what you said, if I'm not listening.
Mark Hunter, he, him, and so me and they and them. Never thought about it.
What about her name is Wanda? Same thing, she, her, they, them, you.
Yeah, at first it was like, I wanted a noun woman, but for pronouns, she, her, he, I, we.
My name is Nicole Miles. I prefer she, her, they, them.
Laura Leon, she, her, I use we a lot. I use it, so, or them.
My name is Shirley Fleming, and I think about this a lot. And I do prefer she. And if I'm referring to others, I like to talk about we or our.
Kat Cook Bigman, she or her. Jackie Carson, she or her, or us. So, she, her, they, them.
Kyle Ullman, he, him, and I was really struggling with the them part of this, and I'm glad that it got to me and us, because that's what I was thinking. I don't like to refer to them. To me, that's ostracizing, or so I would have to say us or we.
Yeah.
Elena Grossman, she or her, often not from the South, but I say y'all. And I often think about what my default pronoun is for, say, animals. And I often will refer to she. And some people, she, her, and he.
Okay, thank you. Just quickly on that, they, them is really gained a lot of traction as a singular gender neutral pronoun that people can at least get their heads around, because we've heard the word before. Now I do a lot of, when I refer to people, I often just talk about my spouse and my child. I don't gender them because it's not necessarily an important part of the discussion. I'd like to continue with a little meditation. So I'd like you to get a firm seat, some feet planted, a little bit of elevation to your spine. Let you breathe and relax. Let yourself imagine you're standing on a road somewhere. Back country road, street you live on. And look behind you. Look at the last 10 minutes. Look at the first presentation. How you got here this morning. Did you sleep during the night? Were you awake with the rain? Go back to yesterday. Go through your day. Monday, back to the weekend. Let the images and the feelings wash over you. Let them go past. Go back to last week. What did you do? What were you excited about? What were you worried about? Early May. Any celebrations or not so happy events? Back into April when it was still pretty cold. Back to March, February. Go back through the whole winter. The secular New Year. Did you have a holiday in December? Go back. Thanksgiving to the fall. What celebrations did you have? What memories come to you? And let those images just wash over you and pass by. Remember Chicago's Halloween. Back to the turning of the leaves. Sweater weather. What'd you do last fall? And then back into the summer. Spring, back to the winter. Go back to 2011. Two years, 3 years, just let the thoughts and the memories of what you were doing wash over you. Slide by, don't hang on to them, just let them pass. Go back 7 years, 12 years. What were you doing 15 years ago? 20 years ago. $30 years, 40 years, 50 or more. And as you look at these memories, as you feel them, as they go past you, let them dissolve into white light. So that all that you see behind you is this white light. Imagine it, see it, feel it. And then turn forward. How do you imagine the next 45 minutes will go? Lunchtime, afternoon work groups. What are you looking forward to? What are you worried about? Where are you going after? What do you think you're going to do tonight? When it gets dark, what will you do through the night, into the morning? What does your Thursday look like? What are you hoping for? What are you not so much hoping for? Friday, into the weekend. It's long. Hopefully you get a day off on Monday. What are you going to do next week? Then comes June. Any work goals for the summer? Any vacation plans? Who might you see? Who you want to see? Who don't you want to see? Go through the summer and start to feel the air getting a little cooler, and as fall comes and the trees start to change. Are you going to be in Chicago, or are you going somewhere else? Go into the fall. What celebrations are coming up? Leaves are falling. What's on your mind for winter? As we approach the end of 2013, when are your New Year's? Into the winter, the spring. What's on the docket for 2014? Where do you hope to be 2 years from now? What are you worried about? What are you looking forward to? Let these ideas pass you by. 3, 4, 5 years down the road, where do you hope to be? What do you think is going to happen? Can you imagine 10 years from now? $15, $19. You go 20, 25, 30 years, where might you be? Farther, 40, 50 years. And as you look forward at your hopes and your concerns and your expectations, let them also fade into white light. And as you stand, sit in this white light, in no particular place, no particular time, as you breathe, imagine the light coming into your body. Ner Adonai Nishmat Adam, the light of the infinite eternal is the soul of a human being. Imagine the light within you joining this light, filling your muscles, your organs, your bones, the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, the ends of your fingers, through your hair. Imagine your body full of this white light from the infinite eternal. And as you breathe, allow that light to start to expand beyond your physical body. And start to merge and meet the light of the people near you. Imagine all our lights joining together, filling this room. And as we breathe, it spills out of the room, down the halls, up to the upper floors, down to the basement, out to the train. Imagine your lights going everywhere through the city, joining other lights. light filling the world and beyond. So before I dive into my notes, any thoughts, comments, concerns, or questions?
That was a very grounding kind of experience.
Good.
I noticed that even going back a couple of days, the memories got real fuzzy real quick. The things that I can't even remember what I was worried about even a few days ago.
So my day job is with the night ministry. And the quick description is I work with LGBTQ and our homeless youth on the streets of Chicago. Mostly up at Clark and Belmont and Halstead, that area, because for 40 years, youth from all over the city, all over the Midwest, all over the country, who are street-based youth have been going there. Partly because it's a 24-hour community, partly because it's the Boys Town area, and something like 42% of youth checking in at youth shelters identify as LGBTQ, queer in one way or another, and so they go there because it's safer to be there than the suburbs or the south side. So it's a more accepting neighborhood in general. And we have churches and synagogues and businesses come out and bring meals to us on the street. We go out a couple of nights a week. We have a van with, I like to say, 3 aisles of Walgreens in the back, you know, and safe-sex supplies and hygiene supplies and all sorts of stuff that people need to survive on the street. You know, hats, gloves, scarves, that kind of stuff. And we have games and activities going on. We get the hula hoops and the jump ropes. The double dutch last night was fantastic. And we also have informational times. We have ministry interns and social work interns. Sometimes we have a Schweitzer fellow. So all sorts of people come in. We have a chiropractor who comes on more and does 90-second adjustments on people, you know, and hopefully we'll develop some longer ones. So we do all sorts of things on the street. We have, the groups come out, we call it the front line of our hospitality. But I would really say all that I just described is kind of secondary or even tertiary to what we're really doing out there. Our main thing is we have what we call a ministry of presence. We're just there with people using a non-judgmental, harm reduction, asset-based, LGBTQ competent, trauma-informed presence that we're there. We don't have a goal. We're not trying to get anyone to school. We're not trying to get anyone to get a job. We're just there to meet them, remember their names the second time I see them. Because I've literally seen jaws drop as wide as they can drop when I remember someone's name I met 3 weeks ago. I mean, I cheat. I go to my coworkers and go, what's that? But, you know, we all do that. But just remember names is just a powerful, powerful thing to people who are treated like numbers a lot of time. We don't do intakes. We're kind of being required by changing laws, as I'm sure some of you know about, to do more intake and assessment kind of work. But we really minimize that with a one-page intake. We don't sit down and take a 16-page history or that kind of thing. We do very little paperwork on the streets, and we incentivize it, for better or for worse. If I can develop a private joke with somebody, I know I have a relationship. There's one young man, I don't know how it started, but every time I see him, I'll say, oh, I looked in the catalog of the chainsaws, but I haven't got one yet. I don't know how it started, but when I mention chainsaws, and I haven't seen him for weeks or months, he cracks up. We have a private language, we have a relationship. We have meaning. I recognize him as a full human being. This quote just happened to be in my notebook. I wasn't going to use it, but it's from Henry Nouwen, and he was a priest writer, and he wrote 40 books on spirituality and whatnot. This kind of captures what we do a lot. More and more, the desire grows in me simply to walk around, greet people, enter their homes, sit on their doorsteps, play ball, throw water, and be known as someone who wants to live with them. It is a privilege to have the time to practice the simple ministry of presence. Still, it is not as simple as it seems. My own desire to be useful, to do something significant, or be part of some impressive project is so strong that soon my time is taken up by meetings, conferences, study groups, and workshops that prevent me from walking the streets. It is difficult not to have plans, not to organize people around an urgent cause, and not to feel that you are working directly for social progress. But I wonder more and more if the first thing shouldn't be to know people by name, to eat and drink with them, to listen to their stories and tell your own, and let them know with words, handshakes, and hugs that you do not simply like them, but truly love them.
Do you remember which of these books that one was from?
I just got this handout once, this quote on it. There was a website I checked it half an hour ago, just quotes by him.
Oh, cool.
Probably 119 of his quotes.
What was the name again?
Who is that?
Henri, so Nouwen, N-O-U-W-E-N.
Maybe we can get the quote where it's written.
So, it's like I was pretty involved with Occupy Chicago, particularly the Occupy Rogers Park group when it came up. But I've always seen my role, and I've always been attracted to social justice, but I really see my role is doing spiritual support for people on the front lines. I love to put my hand in the air and chant and all, but really I want to help keep people who are doing the work spiritually charged and able to go. One of my favorite books is called Trauma Stewardship, and it talks about the impact of doing the kind of work that a lot of us are involved in, and how we get symptoms from working with people who have suffered a lot of trauma, and how to take care of ourselves when that is happening. The work we're doing is incredibly high stress, right? There's a lot of burnout, and case managers get paid horrible amounts of money, and they transfer all the time. If we can keep people from turning over every 8 months to 2 years, the people we work with can get further along and not have to re-explain themselves every so often to rotate. So we need to find ways to keep ourselves healthy, spiritually, mentally, physically, emotionally healthy. I really was kind of rocking on what we were talking about earlier about the relationships. I think so much of what we do is really relationship based. So much of the things we're countering, I think the pyramid we looked at a while, or started to get at it, so much of what we're countering is not just opinions, but like core beliefs people have grown up with: homophobia, racism, sexism. A lot of these things aren't just an opinion people have, they're things that they know deep inside themselves. Well, not the deepest place, but they know because they grew up with it and they were told these messages since they were young. So it's not about just changing someone's opinion, it's getting at someone's core beliefs. And so having a relationship with somebody is really a way to disprove a lot of things people have believed the way people think. So in my work, I think a lot about why my team is all clergy. So what does it mean that I'm a clergy person doing the work I'm doing and not a social worker, not a case manager? What's the difference? So the question, what is faith? What does faith communities, faith have to offer? And I automatically, when I think about faith communities, I go directly to spirituality. That's what it is for me. If I boil my rabbit down to its core, I am here to help, not help, I'm here to be with people on their spiritual journeys. As someone who's maybe spent time working on it. If I need my oil changed or my brakes fixed, I go to Don. You know, he's a mechanic and he's studying mechanics. I'm no better or more qualified other than that I spent some time, you know, in spiritual matters. So I like to be a guide walking with people and exploring with people in their spiritual growth. So how I do that, a lot of what I do is I look to my sacred texts. The Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And almost anything I do, I'll look and see what is the Torah portion. We divide it up into 54 sections that we read throughout the year. And the one this week starts in Numbers 8 through 12. It's called V'Halotecha. And just an example of what I can learn from my text. 3 things came up in the Torah portion when I looked at it this week in the early part of Numbers. One is the idea of Passover, Pesach. So Passover is a time, I think about the psycho-spiritual journey and how my spiritual practice, my religious practice can aid me and aid the community in its psycho-spiritual journey. Passover, we sit together and we retell the story of the Jews' exodus from Egypt, the leaving of 200 to 400 years of slavery. And we look at where we are stuck in our lives. How am I stuck? What am I a slave to in my life? Fortunately, I mean, in my life, most people I know haven't literally been enslaved, but it does still happen. There's a lot of trafficking going on in the world, and tens of thousands of women on a daily basis, particularly. But where am I stuck? Am I stuck to my job? Am I doing something that I don't, did I become a doctor because my family expected of me, but it's not what I really want to do, so I feel stuck. The Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim. It literally means narrow places. Probably because the fertile zone of Egypt was a narrow zone along the Nile. It would flood every so often, and then you'd have fertile fields. But where am I constricted? Where am I bottlenecked? Where are my narrow places in life? So at Passover, we get together and we collectively look. You can do this any time of the year, obviously, but when everyone around you is doing it, and even the most traditional, conservative-minded Jews, if they're not thinking about this, at least they're retelling the story. And we are told every year to look at ourselves as if we personally went forth out of Egypt. So even if you're not even doing the psycho-spiritual digging into it, at least there's some little kernel that says you're supposed to think about slavery in relationship to yourself. But my community and other communities really dig into it. We say, how am I stuck? How can I get out? And there's something really powerful about doing it together when everyone else is doing it. At high holidays, so Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we're supposed to ask forgiveness from ourselves, God, and the people in our lives. It's so much easier to ask forgiveness of people when they're going to be asking forgiveness of you. When everyone's doing it, it's a lot easier when it's expected. Even if it's done on a surface level, it's so much easier. So Passover, we do this looking. But it comes up in the Torah this week that there were some people who had been in touch with death, usually mostly by a dead body at Passover, and they couldn't come and do the offering. It's called a korban, usually poorly translated as sacrifice, but it comes from the Hebrew word karav, which means to come near. So the offerings, the sacrifices, were a way to come nearer to the divine presence. They couldn't do it at Passover, so they asked Moses, what do we do? So Moses goes and asks the infinite eternal, which is often referred to God, and says, okay, what can they do? And God comes back and says, well, a month after Passover, there's a second Passover. You can have a second chance. Because slavery is hard to get out of, right? There's a midrash, a story, that only a fifth of the Hebrews left Egypt. 80% stayed in Egypt because it was too hard to leave, right? So addictions, the job we don't like, the relationship we can't get out of, they're really hard to leave. But we have second chances. We have what's called Pesach Sheni, a second Passover. We are given, and we learn in the Torah that we have more than one chance to get out of our slaveries, to get unstuck. And then there's another point where Moses is saying to God, this is all too much. They say 600,000 men of military age. There are probably 3 million people leaving Egypt, right? And they're Hebrews and non-Hebrews. It's a mixed multitude. Other people saw the opportunity for liberation and left Egypt at the same time. Because Joseph goes to Egypt, becomes second in command, right? He interprets the Pharaoh's dreams. Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, right? He becomes second in command. And he knows there's going to be a famine, so he implements a food system where he has the people grow the food and then turn it into the government, and the government stockpiles it, and then they sell the government. Horrible. No pride in Joseph right here. He sells it back to the Egyptians until they have nothing to offer except for their freedom. He takes them and he buys them. He uses the word slave, the same word he uses to refer to the Hebrew slavery for the Egyptian country. He moves them from city to city. What's more displacing of independence than taking someone and moving them to a new place against their will? So the whole country is slaves. So a lot of the Egyptians saw a chance to get out of that system. And that system got broken down and taken apart, right? It didn't just get a patch on it. We took the system apart and it had to be destroyed. Well, why 10 plagues is a lot of questions. We had to destroy the system of oppression. And that's the radical approach, going to the root. So Moses has 3 million people. He says, this is too much for me. What am I going to do? And the answer is form a Sanhedrin, a Jewish court. Find 70 elders, get them together, and they will help relieve your burden. So Moses gathers these 70, and they form the famous Jewish court called the Sanhedrin. And then the last thing that in this Torah portion I felt that was related to this faith community's faith and public health was the locus classicus of Jewish mystical healing prayer. Miriam and Aaron come to Moses and complain to him about what he's doing too much. And there's some commentaries say he's complained that he married a black woman because his wife is Ethiopian. And so they complain to him about his work, what he's doing, and why are you doing all this leadership? And Miriam, and it's not really clear why just Miriam's treatment was called saras. Often, again, poorly translated as leprosy, this white flakiness on her skin. And my teacher always say, oh, you like white, you can be really white, even though they weren't white, and Moses and Miriam. So Moses then prays for Miriam. He says, God, please heal her. And she's healed. And that has become the basis, foundation for some Jewish mystical healing prayer. So I just found a lot of healing and health ideas right here in the Torah portion. So that's one way that I find my faith guides me, is I can look to the tradition and say, what is in the tradition that is relevant to today and relevant to my life? What teaches me how to be a good coworker and how to ride the bus? Any questions? Leave a lot of room for I know Kirsten, I watched Kirsten's speech, the talk on, your talk from a couple months, was it last month? A few months ago, whatever. And one thing I've noticed is what you brought about Jim Wallace. Jim Wallace has noticed is that I see a lot of Jews and I hear about in other communities, people are finding God by putting that fist in the air and chanting and marching for 3 days against the CPS closings, right? They're finding God and spiritual sustenance by doing that, and they're finding God by planting organic garlic in urban farms. They're digging in the earth, and that's how they're finding spirituality. And so the social justice piece, I often teach that Judaism is not a religion that teaches social justice. Its core, its main story, the Exodus from Egypt, is social justice exemplified. It's a religion about social justice, and I impart that to people as much as I can. Excuse me. I just learned the other night, Tisha B'Av is a Jewish holiday that's coming every summer, and it's a celebration. It's not the right word. It's a commemoration of the saddest day in the Jewish calendar. The temple in Jerusalem was destroyed both times. We were kicked out of countries at different times. The Nazis took actions against us on that day intentionally. And so it's a day where we celebrate and we commemorate destruction And we read Lamentations, the book of Lamentations, where it talks about women eating their babies in Jerusalem that's being sacked. I mean, it's really horrifying. But a colleague of mine, a friend of mine, talked about there's a summer ancestral fire in the old Hebraic wisdom tradition. It's a time for releasing grief and doing healing in the personal, familial, and ancestral karmic lines. That's her language. That we have this chance to go into the destruction and come out of it. There's a tradition that the Messiah, there's a Jewish tradition, the Messiah is born the afternoon of Tisha B'Av. So Jewish holidays, Jewish days start at night and end the following day at sunset. So at the end of the day, in the afternoon, it's said that Messiah is born. In my community, we tend to get together to do a birthday. Let's together birth Messiah into the world. So it may not actually be a person. It may just be my first rabbi, my mother, always taught me that in order for the Messiah to come, we first have to achieve peace. And that's the trick of Messiah, right? That once we that is Messiah. A lot of this is kind of independent work, but it's also, like I said, it works better in community. What communities of faith do, what religion at its best does, is it helps us lead spiritual lives. It gives us a place to hope, at its best, get together and be vulnerable and explore together into the deepest parts of ourselves and the deepest parts of the world. We only have one purpose in life, I teach. And that purpose is to be the true expression of our souls, to be our true selves. Because if we're engaged in this process, it's a lifelong journey. You don't just get there one day. But if we were engaged in this process, we would all realize that we were connected, like we did in the meditation. We wouldn't want to hurt each other. No one's true soul is a murderer, right? That's pain, that's fear, that's human systems that have broken down. If we all were engaged in this work, we would help each other. We would take care of the world's problem because we just see it as I'm connected to the plants, I'm connected to the chair, I'm connected to everyone in this room, in the building. It's all one. A friend of mine wrote a book called Everything is God. I always get it mixed up, everything is God or God is everything. But everything is made of divine stuff. We're all connected. It's a paradox. For me, paradox is one way to define God. God is the force that holds paradox together. We live separate lives and we're all going to go in different directions and we're going to eat different foods and all. At the same time, we all are connected and part of the oneness. And if we, on this journey of being our true self, we will connect to that. And doing it together, any kind of group, a writing group, any kind of group we do things in, it's easier to do it where people are with you, watching you, checking up on you, giving you advice, useful advice, and kind of propping us along when we need a little extra oomph. One thing religion does is, this is my teacher B'nai Lappy's theory. She calls it crash theory. She sees religion as being here to answer life's big questions, to give us stories to answer life's big questions. Why am I here? What's the meaning of life? What is good and evil? And we all do that through our various means. We have different texts, so a lot of them are really related to each other. We have holidays, which kind of answer some of these questions. Inevitably, though, she says those stories fail to give satisfactory answers to the questions, and they crash. A really physical example that the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed, and that was how the Jews engaged the divine. They would bring a sacrifice, a nearness offering to go get near to the divine. They would do this in the temple. The temple was attacked and it was being destroyed, and people had four choices to do. One was to fight it and fight for the old story, right? And the zealots, they did this. They even burned the food supply inside the walls so the people, other Jews would have to fight. Two is you can run away. You just go become a Roman. Integrate yourself into the society that is overtaking you. Third one is you just kind of get lost for a while, and I kind of think a lot of American Jews have been in that lost place for a while, and I see some head nods for other people's face. And people just kind of lost, they don't know what to do with the new and the old, times are changing. I know truly that the paradigm is shifting across the world of how we relate to each other, how we relate to God. The fourth thing you can do, and this is what Jews did at that time, was you can take some of the old and form something new, using that as somewhat of a scaffolding or a model. Rabbinic Judaism was starting to form, but it really came into its strength at the destruction of the temple in the 1st century of the Common Era. They based the prayer services on the times of the offerings, right? So they found connections. Rabbi Lappi goes so far to say they invented a new religion and had the wisdom to call it Judaism also. So last night, I got home early last night, around 11:30, and I had planned to take a nice bath and relax, and just to be well rested for today. But it started raining, and our basement flooded a month ago. And so I spent the next 2.5 hours making sure my basement didn't flood and things didn't get destroyed again. It was a great purging. I didn't choose to do it. I had to throw away a lot of stuff. But last night, I was up till 2 in the morning, and then I was all kind of wired, you know. So I took a bath and I watched Star Trek Voyager. And I'm a big comic book reader, and I'm working on putting together a class on the comic book and graphic novel as a spiritual tool. But I look at popular culture. I read everything weekly, cover to cover pretty much on a weekly basis, because I want to know kind of what's going on and keeping up with popular culture, and the young people I work with keep me up to date on a lot of things too. But Voyager last night had the Star Trek. This is their lost 75 years at full warp speed away from Earth. Right? They went through a transdimensional portal, and they ended up 75 years away from home at full fastest speed. So they're trying to get home, and they encounter a race that developed on Earth and left Earth 65 million years ago. That's saurian, lizard, reptile based. And there's one scientist who's trying to find a distant origin planet, because the doctrine of the group is that they originated here and they're the first species. And this one scientist says, no, we came from somewhere else. And he finds the remains of one of the Star Trek crew that died on a planet and was consumed by a corpse. And he finds that they have 47 genetic markers identical to human beings. And then they get to Voyager and they find out that not only was that these saurian aliens had it connected to human beings, but they had hundreds of species on Earth 65 million years ago had the same DNA strands. And so they proved that this race that was from Earth 65 million years ago. But the rulers, the leadership of the saurian people refuses to hear it and charges the scientists of heresy. Right? Heresy of doctrine. Right? Because they can't imagine that anything will change or shift, and their story works for them still. And the guy has to decide whether to hold fast to this thing and have him and the entire crew of Voyager punished, sent to a penal colony and the ship destroyed, or recant. I guess, So, but the thing is, that it wasn't just an opinion they had, right? It was a deep-held belief they had about we are the first species, and you can't just you show evidence in their face and the response is violent. Right? I love learning spiritual lessons from popular media. What do I want to mention? My life is better when my spiritual practice is on track. I just do better across the board. I think better, I eat better, I feel physically better when I'm engaged in spiritual practice on a regular basis. And our faith communities can help us do that. Like I said, they support me. I do more things when I know that someone's expecting me to do them. I would love to read comic books all day and watch Star Trek and learn to play the fiddle, right? All these things, which you have to do. We have to have hobbies. We can't work all the time. We can't burn ourselves out. So I have to choose from my priorities. So I read compost. So we have to have these things that are true to ourselves and take us away from our work. I forgot where I was going with that. But we're getting close to the end of the time, and I want to leave time for questions and comments. So does anyone have any questions?
I have one. In the beginning, you had us go around the room and you asked us how we would like to be referred to or refer to ourselves.
For gender pronouns?
Yeah. Why did you do that, and how is that connected to spirituality?
So I do it all the time because I work in a community that has a lot of LGBTQ people, and a lot of people who are transgender and either are transitioning from one gender to another or are presenting as gender queer. They want to appear like they go back and forth between gender identities, or they do things that aren't normative for their gender. So although this is a kilt, and I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's a kilt. That's okay. It's weird, but it's okay." And if someone says it's a skirt, I say, "Yeah, no, that's a skirt. Yeah, it really is. Kilts are a kind of skirt." So one of the things I really like to do is provide safe space for everybody, safe and welcoming space. And in order to do that, for transgender people in particular, there's little things you can do, for anyone in queer. You can put up rainbow flags, you can have announcements, you can have non-gendered bathrooms. One thing you can do is every meeting you take in your work, especially when there's people who don't know each other, you can ask people to say their preferred gender pronouns. So someone for whom gender is fluid or changing can get an idea that, oh, this place is a little safer than other places. So safe space, is completely, when suicide rate among transgender people it's horrendous. It's like 40% of transgender folks have tried to commit suicide, or maybe, and some number that's 10, 20, 30 times the rest of the population. So that's a health issue right there. But creating safe space for people, regardless of their gender identity, sexual identity, their race or class, making safe space is a public health issue.
Oh, I see. Okay, I was totally on a different path. I thought it was a spiritual connection. Because usually when I think of I think of I am as being neutral, because our spirit is neutral. I don't think of a spirit as being he or she or her or him. So I just asked that question on those.
I loved it that this is the first group I've been in where people started going to we. Because people in this room are thinking about the connections. That was a very spiritual response. So it is your self-identity is spiritual, and Judaism, especially the mystical tradition, talks about God in male and female voices. So when we sang the song, the angels, we did the 4 angels, and the last one was Shekinah. Shekinah is a word that means indwelling presence of God, the tangible, the experienceable presence of God, and it's a feminine noun. So it's often referred to as the feminine aspect of God. And so it's really useful for people to know, for a lot of people, to know that there's in Judaism, and I don't know the other traditions, that there's a male and female sense of God. I believe God is male and female and neither, right? And everything in between. But it's definitely a healing thing to know that there's this,
Do you have any reflections on the almost paradoxical nature of faith and belief? It in one way it conflicts with new information and science and new things we're learning, and it's hard to reconcile sometimes the old stories and the old ways of looking at things with the new information. And yet it's so grounding and gives us so much meaning and hope.
Religion has to grow and adapt. Churches and synagogues, a lot of people are on their way out. The institutions that we know now are not sustainable, so we have to make some changes. Also, I like to say that I've heard before that scientists are discovering now what the mystics have known for millennia. like the power of meditation. And there's studies on people who are prayed for healing, they heal people. And when you meditate in a town, the crime rate will go down, and there's no other factors that can correlate. I have no problem personally thinking that why couldn't something we call God have made a big bang happen? So I don't, and maybe it's my own blind spot, I don't see such a conflict between science and religion. I think there's ways to bring them together. We can get in trouble. Einstein even had a little trouble, right, with the expanding universe, that why would God create a universe that expands? And he couldn't get to some of his theories because of his ideas. He had to let them go, but he never fully, let go of all that history. So we have to, just allow the possibility that they can coincide.
Struggling with the burnout issue, and I'm wondering if you see any, because in social justice, I come out of a movement that was sort of under the Harold Washington movement here in Chicago, where all these different communities, Jewish, Hispanic, Black, coming together, fighting for empowerment, and other communities were involved too. And we became brothers and sisters, but then everything divided, and now I see a lot of people in social justice, but it's sort of a job, sort of a 9 to 5. Do you see any building of community within the social justice movement, especially, I guess I'm talking about here in Chicago?
Yeah.
And then and if not, how do we create it? Because I think you were talking earlier or something about, how people feel connected is by 7 relations or 6 relations, and so, but I see sometimes now in the social justice movement that there are professional social justice movement people from 9 to 5,
Yeah, I'm going to bring up Occupy again. It's something I've seen this work successfully, particularly the Occupy Rogers Park group. The neighborhood, in general, the neighborhood organizations, Occupy the South Side, Occupy El Barrio, Occupy Rogers Park, have really kind of taken over the main work. And they're still very active. I know a bunch of my Occupy comrades got arrested, at the sit-ins at City Hall Monday. But so 2 things you have to do. One is any social justice work, any public health work, you have to be on the streets with the people you're intending to change. Like, for example, they made a law in Illinois to give people free IDs. Homeless people get free state IDs. So you get a form from a case manager, which is enough of a hurdle. You sign it, but then you have to go get the form notarized. How do you get a form notarized? You have ID. So someone missed a connection there, right? So you had to be on the streets. So you had to be in connection with social justice groups. I think it's okay to get paid to do what you love, as long as you continue to love it. So Occupy Rogers Park, particularly, they're on the street level, working with people and taking leadership from the people whom they're working with. They're also, I'm not as active in the group like I used to be, but I go once in a while. And we had a really good discussion about examining our privilege. What kind of privilege do the members of the group have that are based, I don't think it's a foreign concept to folks. There's systems of oppression and privilege in this world that give me, if I wanted to rob Walgreens blind on the corner of Broadway and Belmont, I'd put on pants and go in behind a bunch of the youth I work with. And I probably could rob the store blind because I wouldn't be watched because these Black transgender youth have just come in the store and they're singing and they're being loud. Right? So I know I have privilege. I know I have privilege in discussions, and but I also have Jewish culture where everyone interrupts each other. So we have to take a look at our privileges and be on the streets. I think those are 2 really important factors in a really bigger question. Those are 2 that come to mind right now. Is that some answer?
So I struggle a lot with that. I think a lot of the grant funding, public health is not supposed to be out in the street, and on top of that, there's a lot of burnout. So when you by night I feel like I'm an activist, but you don't get paid to be on the street a lot. You get paid to work at a desk, and that work is important, it's helpful, it fits into those 10 essential services, but when you go home, it's easy to get burned out if you're spending so much time on the street. So just wondered if you could comment more on that.
I went to a great training yesterday with Mark Sanders. Anyone know him? He's a LCSW. It was on cultural competency. But one of the things he said is that in our work, and I think it's so relevant, we have to be willing to go to bat and take a risk, and maybe even risk getting fired for the people in order to support and speak out for the people we're working with, our clients, our participants. And part of that means we have to start looking at changing the culture of the work we're doing. And I think I was happy to see some of the stuff that Jenny was talking about, where there is some emphasis on getting out and not just sitting behind a computer working on, I don't know what a P factor is, but working on these things and going out and talking to people and finding out what's really going on. So one is we got to start changing the culture of the workplace to allow that to happen. And that's not, doesn't look like a very satisfying answer. But also you guys have to believe, I'm not going to end homelessness by working 60 hours a week and then doing more activism for another 20 hours a week. I'm not going to end that homelessness. I really have to go back to honoring now and that kind of thing, is talk about forming relationships. And I have to go back to the fact that I have to be true to who I am and take care of myself. And I have to be those comic books, and I have to take a hot bath, and I have to play with my 6-year-old. I have to do these things that feed me and nourish me, because if I deplete myself, and these things that are so urgent and demand so much time and attention, it just feels insurmountable unless we're working all the time. I just have to start believing that that it's okay, that it's okay and necessary to do self-care, to use a word that some people don't like a lot. So look at trauma stewardship, and maybe really, if you haven't read it yet.
Kind of maybe a comment to that. I don't know if this will be coherent. I don't know. Speak up just a little bit. Okay, so I have progressively, in my position, moved into more of an office-focused job. And so mostly in my job, I work with people with disabilities. I do international outreach. So a lot of my human interaction is through Skype, which is wonderful. But I mean, it's also lonely in an office just to talk on Skype. I have 2 staff who work with me. But a big reason I love working in the field of disability is because of what Henry Nouwen, what we read from him, who is a man who worked. He was a priest in a community called L'Arche, which is an intentional community where people with disabilities live together in mutual relationship with people without, and they live just like a normal community. And in doing that, you learn to slow down, you learn to listen to people and to love one another. It's just a very refreshing community. So I work within this community, but I'm in this office, and I feel sometimes very separate. And it was only about a year ago that I was very engaged and promoted and separate, So kind of this inner tension, and I think what helps me in that is that I still am pushing myself to be intentional about the relationships that I am in. So the staff I have that work with me, in those relationships, I can be incredibly intentional about fostering, the spiritual aspect of those relationships, or empowering them in the work that they're doing, or helping to continue growing our perspective, and that's my position right now. And so my position is kind of in this leadership role of maybe helping others to see it in that way, and that's one way I can contribute. And then pushing myself too to think, okay, well, yeah, I'm in an office, but I need to go out for walks, and I need to go into the programs, and I need to go and hang out with some of the adults with disabilities I work with, and I need to be okay with taking calls and chatting with them sometimes when they want to tell me about their day, or when I'm at church on the weekends or during the week with my community groups and things, like engaging with them and how can we be engaged in our community. So I think the challenge is not letting professionalism take over, but keeping the intentionality in what our lifestyle is and what our calling is, or however you refer to it, staying intentional about that in every relationship and not being boxed in by the structures of an office or promotion or position.
And do what you can in the context in which you find yourself.
Yeah.
I want to say slackers like Thich Nhat Hanh and Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, they spend hours a day reportedly in like prayer, contemplative prayer, hours a day. Okay. So you can change the world, even on a personal level, if you take these hours to take care of your spiritual life. But also, it doesn't take hours a day necessarily. You can start with 5 minutes. You can start with changing your intention while you're driving to let people, this is one of the woman who wrote Trauma Stewardship said is, let people, decide you're going to let everybody in one day. Cut in front of you, you know. But I see what that does to you. You're going to be fine with it, okay? I've made a distinction myself. I can go fast when I'm driving to get somewhere, but I can't rush. I tell myself, don't rush. If you have to go fast, but don't rush. Because when I'm rushing, I'm mad at myself for not leaving earlier. But then, so then I stop trying to rush and hurry, and I just let myself, I go fast. I'll admit that, but I try to change my attitude about it. So I'm not even taking less or more time out of my day. I'm doing a little something to change the attitude while I'm doing something I'm already having to do. Think of the gift of laundry when you're folding your laundry. I mean, God, I love this shirt. Remember what I did when I got this shirt? Last time I wore this shirt, you know, we did such and such. You can do little things within the structure and the time allotted that you already have to increase your spiritual health. And then you can build on it.
I think a lot of what we're talking about is this sort of, one of the things I think is really powerful about what faith brings, if we're really intentional about it, is this sort of countercultural way of being. And, you know, even in just the way that you've taught us today and we've learned together, it's been a countercultural way. You didn't lecture, you told stories, you interpreted some scripture, you know, reflected a little bit. But from that, you know, I could generate a whole amazing list of learnings and things to think about further. But this whole thing of culture change, I think in more and more conversations that I'm part of, and Shirley and I were just part of a conversation on yesterday about violence in a community and how the organizers there are really trying to shift not only on like doing things to stop violence, but actually shifting the entire culture of the community. Obesity, I think it's the same thing. It's not only getting people to eat differently, it's actually impacting the whole culture. And that this is something that as people of faith, what we know is really powerful. So how do we, as people of faith, and how do we in our projects really kind of shift the culture of the way we meet, the way we understand what we do? I mean, that Henry Nouwen piece is so powerful because who here works that way? Does anyone here work that way? We're about projects, about agenda, about getting something done, and if we don't, you know, we're like not meeting expectations. You know, there is no reinforcement for actually that way of working, which in fact is the most powerful way of affecting deep change. So any thoughts about how we provide leadership as people of faith and as people who work with faith to kind of bring that forward in a different way?
I love what you said over here, just like with the people in your office, it's the way you approach them. You think of that as every encounter is important, right? So you're changing the culture of your office just by this relationship-based model you're using with people. So, right. It's like we read this quote, we go, we gotta change everything, right? And it's like, oh, it's impossible to do that. You know, we can get stuck in that loop. But if we do the little things we can do, and just the way we encounter everybody. I had an assignment, I asked one of my teachers for an assignment, and he gave me this assignment to take a walk every day. And as I'm walking, go from point A to point B. And just take it in, the sounds, the smells, the sights. and then get to point B and then go back to A. But when I get to point B, imagine the veil lifting. And imagine seeing the magic of the ordinary, seeing God in everything. God in that oil tanker truck. What could possibly be godly about that oil truck that just rumbled by me on Harlem Avenue in Oak Park? That's where I did this walk once. That guy has a job, right? He's getting some money. You know, and look at the birds, look at the cracks on the pavement. You know, look at where's the magic. And it got to the point where I couldn't do the assignment anymore because I couldn't do the first part without not seeing it. So if we take that into our relationships and our day-to-day, that kind of attitude of our religion, see the God, see the divine, see the magic in each person. If we start having relationship-based culture at our work, we can start incorporating these Henri Nouwen kind of ideas just in our interactions, and maybe that's how things grow and spread. And maybe we get to form a new agency where we start from the beginning. But right now, you know, we can do it with it.
You know, that makes me think of what we do at the Samaritan Center for Congregations and the way in which we engage with congregations around resourcing them and the service that we offer is that of a conversation. And that of just listening, and listening to what the need is, and listening about what specific resources they need for their situation. And, you know, in a way you sit there and go, yeah, that's a no-brainer. You know, yeah, of course. But listening in that way and the power of that conversation has become transformational. And we don't take time to listen anymore. We are out to sell our own product. We are out to get the project done. We're rushing up. We don't take time to just listen. And the power that happens in that, and actually the transformation that I have experienced recently, and I'm a therapist by training, so I listen all day long, but the power of that listening in this new way with congregations, I have seen them go, wow, thank you. This was different than what other people do. So I think that ministry of presence that our faith talks about, that ministry of presence that in the New Testament, you know, where Mary sat at Jesus' feet and just listened, that's something that is a huge resource that I think faith brings to this public health arena where these people don't get listened to. You know, so the ministry that you do a lot of listening, I would imagine, where these people get listened to and listened to so that we can understand them and accept them and not diagnose them or change them. And it's through that they do ultimately change. So anyway.
Yeah, to actually trust what we know.
That's right. That's right.
We have a few more minutes.
How are people doing? What do you think, Shirley? One more question?
One more question.
Let's do one more, and then
And I'll close out with the.
Yeah, and maybe as you close, you could also bless the food for us and our time of eating together.
And we'll do the song one more time after the question.
Robert?
Yeah, this reminds me of what Craig Rannebaum talks about in Ministry of Presence to persons with mental illness on the streets. He talks about training people to be deeply companioning, that walking with rather than leading or following and pushing people, but deeply companioning.
Amen. Yeah,